Okay, so welcome to this new video where we are gonna be texturing him, and I'm not gonna be texturing him entirely, but I'm just going to be painting out the skin. So as you can see, I am choosing the base color first, and I am gonna be adding that to the palette. So this base color is gonna act as an eraser. So let's just say if I were to do anything weird, I can just pick this color and then remove the color that I have ruined. So this is kind of like the eraser. Now you can see that I'm using this brush, and you just need to increase the jitter. So as you can see, the jitter is at 1, and you need to just play with the spacing. So this is the kind of brush you would get after that. So the workflow is pretty simple. What I actually like to do is I like to add the darker areas first. I don't really care about the color at this point. I am just thinking about the value. So for example, in the inner part of the nose, you can see the value is a little bit lower, which means the value is a little bit darker. So I am adding the darker color, and that darker color is not black entirely. I'm just choosing the main color, the base color, and I am just lowering down the value. So that's how I am adding the darker tones. So as you can clearly see, after I'm done with the darker tones, I am just adding it wherever I feel like the value is low. For example, in this case, you can clearly see even though the lips are red, they are also darker. So I am adding the darker part first so that I can actually use the color later. And because of the face set, by the way, this is something, if you are uh, pretty familiar with the Blender sculpt, you can pretty easily just use the face set as well. Now, as you can see, I am adding the reds. So because this is a time lapse, obviously I'm gonna have to commentate over a video. So I'm gonna be seeing what I'm doing, and then I am gonna do what I am thinking and why I am doing this. So I am adding the reds right now because obviously the lips are red. One of the things that you need to realize is I am going to be changing the base color and the lips color twice, because again, you cannot really practice something like this and then just create pretty perfect portrait in the first go. So this is just a trial and error thing. I'm just thinking if this color is going to work or not. Also, I am going to do a whole lot of renders, and because this is a time lapse, you might not be able to see the renders for nice amount of time, so you might have to pause in order to look at the test renders. But yes, you can see that I'm adding the reds now after adding the values. So this is basically what the workflow is, and I am just going to try to make sure that I use the broader colors first, and I am going to go into the details later. Obviously, this is right now I am just doing the broader colors, which is obviously something you should do. Even when you are sculpting, you try to make sure that the bigger forms work, and then you try to go into the secondary and then in the tertiary. Same thing is happening in this particular case. I am just with the broader stroke, I am just filling up the colors right now. I don't really care about the blending of the colors. I don't really care about the details that you can see on the skin right now. All the details are gonna come later. So that's something that I'm doing. I'm just trying to make sure that I basically get the bigger color right, and that's what I'm doing. You can clearly see that after the blacks, I am also adding the reds right now. So this was the process. I could have just used the darker reddish color to add the red in the first go, but this is something that I just like to do. You can experiment on your own. This is totally fine, and you're gonna see in the future that I am gonna be experimenting a lot because of the test renders. So yes, now you can see after I am done with the darker tones and the reddish tones, it is time to add a little bit of paler, a little bit of darker, a little bit of greener tones. So that's what I'm doing right now, and this color is gonna be on the fat part of the face. For example, wherever there is fat pads, I am going to be adding those colors. So you can clearly see wherever there are wrinkles, for example, I am just adding that color, even though in the future I'm going to be blending it pretty nicely. So you might not even be able to figure out where the color have actually have went. And this is so subtle that you might not be able to see it in the video. And if you cannot see it in the video, then I actually don't know what to like say about it. But yes, I am adding it a little bit. And now it is time to add the paler colors, like the literal paler colors that you can clearly see in the skin and the reference. So yes, you can see wherever this is the part where the sunlight actually hits the least, and that's why I am adding this paler color in the bottom part of the nose. So yes, And this part on the border of the lips, this is also one of those things that actually not me but Chris Costa does, so I feel like I should do it too. It might not look that nice right now, but don't you worry. This is just a block out. We are not really concerned about the blending of the colors right now. We are just putting the colors there just for the sake of having something there, just for the sake of variation. In the future, we are gonna be start blending the colors, and they're gonna just start looking so much nicer. And this is the color. As you can clearly see, I am also making the wrinkles a little bit paler because wrinkles usually don't have the muscles, and because of that they don't usually have the blood in that particular area as much, so they usually just get paler. Obviously, just look at your references, and if you feel like that you have that, then please add it. In this case, as you can see, I am using this alpha with the same brush to create more small details. Now if you really want this alpha, I can give it to you. I actually have forgotten where I got this from, so I'm gonna have to see where I have gotten this alpha from. Maybe this is from ZBrush. I have drawn something similar from the ZBrush, or I basically have just forgotten, which is kind of weird and kind of stupid of me. But if you really want this alpha, just create some dots on like a black image and you'll basically just get something similar. So this is not something super hard to create an alpha like this. Now you can see that I am using this alpha. Actually, I'm not using this alpha right now. I just wanted to show you that we're going to be using this brush in the future. As you can see, I have removed the alpha from the textures. So again, I am at the bigger size brush. And the reason that I'm not using the simple draw brush is because that draw brush just does not give us any sort of variation, and the skin is all about variation. So as you can clearly see that I am using this brush so that I can get as much variation as I possibly can. Now I have started adding the greens. Obviously the face have the greens, the blues, the darker tones, the reddish tones, and in this particular case, wherever I feel like we need to have greens, I am just adding the greens. So yes, in the future there is going to be a part where we are going to start blending the colors, but right now we are just blocking out the colors just like we block out the sculpt. And this is just the way that I like to approach painting the skin. Now you can see that I have started blending the colors, and the way you can tell that I have started blending the color is pretty simple. You can see that I am color picking the neighbor colors, and I am just trying to make sure that I basically can blend the colors nicely. As you can clearly see that I'm picking the neighbor colors right now and I'm just drawing it. So that means that I'm starting to blend the colors. So this is obviously the next step. After I'm done with the blending of the color, I'm just gonna start adding all the details that you can see in the face and also the detail that you've seen in the thumbnail. By the way, if you want to know the shortcut of the color pick, the shortcut is S, and you can just press the button S and you can pretty easily just pick the color. One thing that I do a whole lot while I am painting the skin is to do test renders, and as you can see that I'm setting up a camera to do the test renders, and I'm just choosing the color as an attribute to see whether the color is working or not. And in this case you can see how the color is looking. One of the first thing we need to do is we need to remove all the colors from the HDRI that I'm using. You can see how the skin is looking right now, and one of the things that you can notice is that our original skin is a little bit darker, so we need to lower down the value of the whole color. So the base color that I have chosen is not as dark as I wanted it to be, so I need to lower down it, and in order to lower it down I can just use the RGB curves and I can just lower down the value. So you can see that I have lowered down the value, and this is the render. So you can clearly see this is the render. And now we can compare which one is closer to the reference. So if this particular version is closer to the reference, we are just going to bake this particular color to our color attributes. And in order to do that, I am just going to click on RGB curves by Control Shift click, and it is going to put an emission node. And if you were to go into the bake, you can just use the bake type emit, and the target is going to be color attribute, as you can clearly see on the right. And now we have the updated version of the color in the color attribute. So now we can just start painting on this particular version. So this is one of the ways you can pretty easily just change or change the hue or saturation or the value of your current painting setup, and you can just rebake it onto your sculpt, and you can just continue start painting. So one of the first thing you can see that the lips are looking okay, but in the future you're gonna see that I'm going to be changing it 2 times. And one of the things you need to change is actually I need to change, not you, because I am the one who's painting it right now. Not right now, I painted it. So one of the thing is you've just seen it. I had to remove this reddish kind of a tone from the bottom of the nose that was not really looking that good. So that was the first thing that I did, and now I am just choosing a darker toned color because I feel like even though we have lowered down the value, we need to still add a little bit of darker color. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. As you can see that I'm lowering down the value of the skin by using a darker toned color. And this is something that I figured out after I am done with the render. So this is kind of important. If you want to know what are the changes you want in your skin, you just do a test render to see what are like the differences between your test renders and the references, and then you can pretty easily decide what are the changes you actually want in your portrait. And you can see that I've lowered down the skin value, and now I'm just doing another test render to see the current value of the skin is working or not. So I am not going into the details, I'm not going into the blending as much. I just want to make sure that the base color is actually okay. So if the base color is okay, then I can proceed. If the base color is not okay, then I need to just figure out the base color that is gonna work. Because if the base color is not gonna be okay, then there is no point in adding the details. So yes, right now I feel like that the base color is actually kind of okay, and I can just continue start adding the details. Not the details, but at least the secondary colors. So if you can divide the sculpting in 3 parts, like the primary, secondary, tertiary shapes. You can also divide the painting of the skin in 3 parts. Right now, we are working on the primary shapes, like on the primary forms or the primary stroke, however you want to say it. In the future, you can see we are going to be switching to the secondary version, and then we are just going to go into the tertiary. So right now, I am just breaking out the colors, which means that I am in the primary part of the skin color. So this is something that I'm doing right now, and this is just something that you need to figure out first. If you don't figure it out first and you start adding the details, then it is gonna be pretty hard for you to change the base color. Okay, now you can see that I am kinda in the middle of primary and secondary forms. So I am also adding the variation on the nose, as you can clearly see. Also, I'm just trying to figure out if the base color is working or not. And this is something that I am just gonna do. I've already told you the workflow. Again, I'm just gonna do a test render. So this is just gonna be the workflow. I'm gonna do the test render. I'm gonna see whether the color right now is working or not, and what are the things that I need to change. And the recent render, as you can see, it is much more closer to the reference, which means we are at least progressing, and we are not just staying behind. So step by step you need to get closer to the reference, and just figure out the differences you have between the reference and the test renders, and try to get closer to the reference as much as you can. Right now I felt like that the skin needs to be a little bit more brownish. So as you can clearly see that I'm adding the browns right now, because I figured out that the base color is still not as accurate. So instead of going into the shaders and just lowering down with the RGB curves, I'm just using a darker toned brush to start adding those tones. Now you can also see in the bottom part of the bottom lip, you can see this darker toned color, and I have also just started adding that, which means that I'm already in the on the secondary phase of the color painting. I don't know why I took that long to say that word, but you can see in the bottom lip, there is just darker tone of color, and I'm just trying to add something similar. One of the thing you're gonna realize is this portrait is obviously from the course that I've created. And if you really wanna check out the course or the full detailed version of this video and more videos from start to finish, that you can obviously just check out that course. But in that particular course, you cannot see the ears, and because you cannot see the ears, I'm not really gonna be painting anything on it. So yes, you can see how the color is looking right now, and if it is closer to the reference or not. And it is definitely closer. By the way, you can clearly see that we are getting closer and closer, and we still have not added any of the details or any of the variation. We are just playing around with the base color right now and the secondary colors. So that's pretty nice that we are already at a nicer looking skin. And you can see that I need to remove some of the greens, by the way, because I think not the greens but the reds, because I figured out that the red is a bit too much, and I need to lower down the red, because in the second reference that I was looking at, it was not as red as we have right now, and it was a bit too pale. So I need to do another test render. Like you can see, this red is kind of matched with this particular reference, but we have more references, so I had to remove some of the reds. Now you're gonna see that I'm gonna start blending the colors, because the variation that I have right now in the skin is something that I don't want right now, because I'm still working on the bigger colors. And one of the ways you are gonna be able to add variation is you basically just add colors and then remove it. And this adding and removing process is basically going to create randomness in the skin. So right now you can see that I think that I had a bit too much randomness, which is something that I didn't had in the reference, even though those randomness was looking okay. But before I talk about that, you can see that I've added a texture in the texture panel, and that texture panel is just going to give me more randomness. So basically, I'm just doing this for the more organic look. And yes, now that we have talked about the texture that I've added, I just wanted to say that because in the skin right now, like in the reference, the variation that I got previously was not accurate to what I have in the reference. I had to remove it, and now you can see with the texture included, I am gonna be re-adding those variation. And the method is, again, I've told you the method. The method is going to be adding and removing some particular colors. So in this case, you're gonna see that I am adding red, I think. Yep, you can see that I'm adding red. So this adding of red and then removing using the base color is going to give us that variation. In this particular case, I'm still just blocking out the color, and that block out of the color is also giving us the variation that we want in a skin map. Not in the skin map, but in the base color, sorry. I basically have just added the red. As you can see, now I am adding the pale color. So the way you're going to be able to know where you want the pale and where you want the red, again, the best way to figure that out is to just look at the reference. In this particular case, wherever you're going to have the beard, you are going to have more greens and the blues there, because a male basically just uses the the shaver, for example, to clean that particular part up. And because of that, that particular part basically gets a little bit greenish and bluish. And for the paler colors, wherever you're gonna have fat pads, you can get some paler colors there. For the reds, wherever you feel like there are more blood going on, for example, in the nose, in the lips, in the cheek, in the cheek area, so that particular part can get reddish. But yes, in the end, just look at the reference and you can pretty easily figure it out. You can clearly see I am adding the pale colors below the eyebrows, and that's basically again similar reason. Because of the wrinkles, I am just adding the paler color, and that's basically what I'm doing right now. Not adding the paler color, but adding the variation, a little bit of secondary colors basically. So you can see on the cheek part, there are some variation going on that are kind of reddish and brownish. So right now I am just going to try to add those. But before I continue doing that, I'm just trying to figure out if the color that I have chosen is basically going to work or not, because it does not make sense to do the whole painting part and then you realize that the color is not working. So first thing you need to figure out is whether the color is working or not. And if the color is working, just continue adding all these details. In my particular case, I am just gonna be changing the color in the future. Right now, as you can see that I have started working on the nose, and basically I've just abandoned the cheek area. And this is something that I do. I'm still not in the tertiary part of the skin details, by the skin details. I'm just saying the base color details. So right now I'm just trying, you can say I've told you like the primary, secondary and tertiary forms. You can say that I'm still in the secondary form right now. So I'm just trying to figure out the color. I'm just trying to see whether the bigger colors are working or not. And in the future, I am definitely gonna go in the tertiary part as well. So in the lips, you can see the lips are pretty darker in the border part. So I am just adding that darkness over here. And you can clearly see, you can like in the reference, you can see that this part of the lip is a bit darker. So I am just trying to achieve the same thing in the base color as well. Again, just look at the reference. It's not really that hard to figure out whether you want something or not. And this is how the render have turned out to be. Again, I felt like that the lips color are not working, and it is a bit too paler. I think I can remove, not remove, but add a little bit of reds in this particular case. So you can see that I am in the red part, and I have increased the red a little bit. You can see how the nose is looking and how much variation we need to add. So that's basically what I'm talking about right now. Actually, this video is from the course where you can, if you really want to learn this in detail and the whole portrait making stuff, then this is part of a course actually, this time lapse. So if you want to learn this in the real time, if you want to learn what I'm talking right now, if you want to learn each and every step that I'm thinking, then please buy the course. And also if you want to learn the whole portrait making, then also you can buy the course. So in this particular case, you can see that I've talked about it, that the lips color are not working for me. So I am just going to be changing the lips color right now, and this particular color is also not working, so I had to undo it. And now I am changing the color again. I'm like using a little bit darker and a little bit brownish version. And again, this is actually just me figuring out if the color is working or not, because that is like one of the most important thing. So yes, that's basically what the workflow is. You figure out whether the color is working or not, and if the color is working, just start painting. Like I've already shown you how you can get your brush to have more variation. And yeah, just keep on painting. And I'm gonna be doing that for pretty long. So I'm just gonna leave you here and I'm just gonna get silent. Wait, before I go silent, I just wanna say, if anything important were to come up, I'm just gonna come back. So don't you worry. Okay, so I'm back and you're gonna see that in between the wrinkles, I'm just still trying to add the paler colors instead of the normal color that we have in the whole skin. And again, the purpose of adding the paler color is to give more variation between the skin and the wrinkles. So by adding the paler colors, you can basically distinguish between the skin and the wrinkles pretty easily. So that was the reason that I've added the paler color, and you can see that I'm again doing the render. And doing the render is pretty important in this particular workflow, because I'm just doing the render and then comparing it with the reference. In this particular case, the color between the eyes, not between the eyes but in the eye bags, you can see I am basically just going to add darker colors. And the reason is I have some references for that, so I just tried to basically achieve something similar, and in the end it didn't really look that good, so I had to remove it afterwards. But yes, that's something that I did, and I just wanted to tell you that. So now you can see that I am basically completing the lips, even though I am gonna be changing the color of the lip in the future. So me completing the lips doesn't mean that I cannot change it afterwards. You can see that I am working on the lip right now because I'm gonna be changing the color in the future. If you really want to, you can skip this part because I'm gonna do it again in the future. So but yes, if you really want to, you can just stick to the video and watch it. But I just wanted to tell you that I felt like that it is not matching with the reference as much, so I had to change it one more time. Okay, you can see that I'm adding and removing the colors, and that adding and removing is, I've told you, this is the workflow we are going to use. So this adding and removing is basically giving us the variation that we want in the base color. And that's what I'm doing right now. You have seen me, I have just removed the colors, and now I'm just reintroducing them. So this adding and removing again, this is the main workflow that I use to create randomness, to create variation. So that's what I am actually just keep on saying again and again. I cannot speak for some reason. But yes, this is the reason that I'm saying it again and again, because this is like the main workflow that I use to create the variation. And in this particular case, you can see that I'm adding the paler colors in the lips as well. So this is actually something that you can do as well, by the way. People might think that lips are only red, but you can add little bit of these paler colors, and they can act like specular highlights sometimes, and you will get some nice looking variation that you might not have imagined before. So adding the paler colors is actually kind of okay in the lips as well. Just don't do it a bit too much. So yes. By the way, one thing that I wanted to say is this particular mesh that you are looking right now, it does not have multi-resolution modifier. So the amount of polygons that I'm working on right now is actually a solid object without any sort of multi-resolution modifiers, because Blender does not allow you to paint on an object that have multi-resolution modifiers. So just in case if you are thinking why the paint brush is not working on your object, that's because you probably have a multi-resolution modifier, and yep, it does not just work with that. Now you can see that I'm adding the greens in the lips. So if you feel like the pale color was weirder, then it could potentially be weirder for you. And yes, you can definitely add a little bit of green in the lips as well, and it is totally fine. By the way, multi-resolution modifier is what I was talking about. In this particular case, you can see that I have 12 million polygons approximately, actually 13 million polygons. And that's why you can see that I was able to add all these details. If you don't have a PC good enough, then I think 4 million is gonna work fine as well. It is totally okay. You don't really have to push to the 12 million, because in the end, each and every single polygon is not gonna come into the pixels that you're going to render. So 4 million, if you can do 4 million, 5 million, or 6 million, then it is okay as well. So yes, in this particular case, you can see that wherever there are like wrinkles popping out, I am trying to add the paler colors. So I am still just following the same thing. And I am gonna try and add the black darker color, as you can see that I'm doing right now. Not in this particular case, this particular part is gonna stay, but in the corner of the eyes, and eventually these eyes are not gonna look nicer. I thought they're gonna look nice, but they didn't, and I had to remove it in the future as well. So this is something again. I've rendered it out and I figured out that this is not working, so I had to remove it. So this is basically just what the process is again. Now the multi-resolution modifier is what I was talking about. If you have a sculpt and you wanna paint your sculpt, you have to apply the multi-resolution modifier, which is something that Blender should fix. By the way, I think you should have the ability to be able to paint And a multi-resolution modifier can store that data just like it store the sculpting data, right? I think it should do it. And in this particular case, you can see that I am not gonna be happy with the lips color, so I am gonna be changing the lips color and also the eye, like the eye bag color that I have. It is a bit too darker and I just didn't like it. So these are the two things that I'm definitely gonna change. As you can see that I'm actually at the lips. So yes, this is what I'm gonna be doing, and I am gonna get silent, and I'm just gonna let you see the video. Okay, wait. Before I go, I just wanted to say, and it could potentially be a bit frustrating for you, but this is not the last time that I'm changing the color of the lips. I am just gonna do it one more time, and trust me, that is gonna be the final. This is the second last time that I'm changing the color. So you can see the color in the reference. I thought this color is gonna work fine, and I'm just trying to add that because of it. But it turned out that it didn't really work that much, so I had to like change it again. But yes, it was not my fault. You can clearly see this is like something similar that you can see in the reference. So I just tried to achieve the same thing, and it just didn't work out. And yeah, I basically have to rechange it one more time, just one more time, I promise you. So yes, that's basically what happens when you are confused as like me, when you are confused in individual like I am. So yes. And you can see that I'm also removing the black as I promised you that I'm gonna do. So yes, this is all happening because I was able to do a render, a test render, and after doing the test render, I can see whether the color is working or not. By the way, if you are using an HDRI, go to the nodes of the world setting, like of the HDRI settings, and remove all the color by using the hue saturation node and remove all the saturation so that the color of the HDRI does not affect your lighting and it does not like change the actual color that you have on your object. That's what I did. I didn't really shown you that, but that's what I did. So if you are using an HDRI to do the test renders, then just remove all the saturation from it and only use black and white or grayish toned lights in the HDRI to basically see the actual color. Oh, by the way, you can see that I have started painting these details. And again, the procedure is pretty simple. I'm adding and removing stuff to create more variation. One thing that I wanted to say is this particular area, like this particular part, is not going to be 100% accurate as you are seeing in the reference. And the reason for that is you usually does not get the likeness through these small little details unless they are moles. So if he would have had some moles in some particular areas, so I would have actually, tried creating that particular mole with the likeness, like match with the likeness. Okay, now you can see that I've started adding these variation in the skin, and the reason that I'm doing it is because if you want to make sure that your skin actually looks natural, it looks realistic, and it does not look like it made out of silicone, you have to make sure that you get these variations in your skin or in your base color. Otherwise, it is just going to look like it is made out of silicone, and you don't want that. So, if you want your portrait to have natural realistic looking skin, make sure that you basically get these variation, get these amount of skin details into your skin. And it is not really that hard, like I've shown you. It's not like super hard to do, so you just need to add those alphas, and through that you can actually add these details. Now you can see that I have chosen this brush, and this is not the random brush, by the way. The reason is I wanted to add these dots. Now the thing is these dots are not moles. So for this reason, I can actually just randomly put them in this particular area. And if you have seen the render, actually, you won't even be able to see these as much, because I think I basically have just removed them, like pretty much removed them, not entirely, but still. Also, one of the important thing is I am not just putting a dot. I am still trying to blend this color with the skin so that there would be a transition when these particular dots start. Now, these could be moles, but I don't think they are. But these are just some spots on the skin, so I am kind of just not trying to add them like they are in the reference as well. I mean, you technically can, and I should have done the same thing, but yes, they don't really contribute to the likeness as much, and it is just a waste of time to literally pick point all the areas where the points like these dots are exactly. So that's basically the reason that I'm not adding them exactly where they are in the reference. And yes, this is okay. You can see that I've removed them, but I think I am gonna be adding them. So right now I have removed them, so everything that I've just said, it just gone into the drain. But yeah, you can see that I am kind of making this particular part a little bit brighter, because you can see in the reference, this part is a little bit greenish or a little bit brighter than the skin, like than the overall skin, not brighter entirely, but a little bit more greenish. And there are some less red in this particular area, so that's what I've did right now. And now I am re-adding these dots. As you can see that I'm also blending the dots with the skin, so that the transition, again I have talked about it, so that the transition would be pretty smooth. And you can clearly see all of these dots that I'm adding, they are not 100% match, but because he have these, I thought if I were to add these dots in the skin as well, it is just gonna be closer to the reference, and it is gonna be closer to the likeness. So that's basically the reason. Also, you can, I don't know if you can see it in the reference, but there are some brown kind of an area. And I thought of adding the same, like I thought of adding the same thing, as you can clearly see. So the test render was to see whether the color is working or not. And I think the color is working, so I'm just gonna be adding these. Now you can see around these areas there are some darker spots. I said the brighter, but I didn't mean to say brighter. I actually meant to said that there are some less red. And you can see around these areas we have some black kind of a tone in the skin. So I'm just trying to do the same thing over here. And again, just looking at the reference and trying to figure out what I can do, and what are the differences between the reference and the test renders that I have, and try to minimize those differences is basically what the workflow that I like to use. Now you're gonna see that in order to create variation, I am going to be adding the darker tones as I've just did, and then I'm going to be adding these pale colors. So again, I've said it I think before like 2 or 3 times, but I am gonna say it now. In order to get these variation that you are seeing in the skin right now, the workflow is to add and remove. So that's basically what the workflow that I like to use. If you think that there is a workflow that you can come up with, and that particular workflow is better, obviously, if you are going to be using the texturing XYZ maps, for example, or the 3D scan store maps, then it is going to be less artistic but more accurate to the real world, because obviously those are scans and those are extracted from the real people. But the reason that I like to do it this way is because this is more artistic, and I am kind of a fan of Chris Costa, and Chris Costa like to do it this way whenever he's working on his personal portraits. So I kind of like the way, I think this is a nice idea that you are doing everything on your own, and it obviously is more artistic. I mean, more artistic than projection painting of a of a base color or a displacement map, right? So yes, this is something that I feel like is definitely more artistic, definitely much more creative, and you just experiment with your brushes. Like for example, I'm doing right now. You can see that I was playing with the jitter setting, and you basically just change the brush the way you want to be. And yes, this is more artistic, 100%, because you are doing everything on your own. You are not really relying on anything else. And this was actually the whole purpose of this course, being able to create the whole portrait without having to rely on any other third party, not software, but third party resources, for example, displacement maps or these base color maps that are basically the 3D scans of a real human. I feel like that is not cheating, but it is still not artistic because it's like super easy to add those details if you are using a resource like that. And if you are doing it this way, this is obviously much more artistic. And for every personal projects, I like to do it this way. But yes, if I am working in production, there is no way that I'm gonna be doing it like this because first thing first, this is not physically accurate. It does look hyper realistic, I'll say. I mean, realistic is enough. I feel like that I can do better, by the way. But yes, it does look realistic, but it's not physically accurate, and it is totally fine. If you were to look at Chris Costa's portrait, I am way behind him, by the way. His portraits are just so much more better. I mean, he's literally, I mean, he's a guru, right? So obviously he's gonna be better. But if you were to look at his portraits, you're gonna see that his look a bit too realistic. I mean, literally more real than a real person. But his portraits are still not physically accurate, and it's not me who is saying that. It's actually his own words. So he actually have said that, and if he can achieve something like this, I think I should be able to do that in like few years, after enough practice. So I really like the way he thinks. I really like his like approach to personal portraits. Obviously, he have worked on the Hulk. He have worked in the Marvel. He also have worked on the like the King Kong, the recent one. I think I cannot remember. And in those projects, he used all the resources that he can get his hand to. So yes, if you are working in the production, obviously you have to use the texturing XYZ or the 3D scan stores textures, because first you need to be physically accurate. Second, you need to save time. This is obviously more time taking. And yes, this is basically the reason that I'm doing it like I am doing right now. If I can get this much amount of details manually, like all of these pores, all of these lines that you're seeing in the skin right now, they are manually sculpted. And as you can clearly see, the paint, the base colors is also manually painted. If you can do it like this, and after doing it like this, if you were to go into the production, it is gonna be super, super easy for you to work with those textures because you've already achieved similar kind of details manually. So it's gonna be super easy for you to achieve similar kind of details with all the help you can get. And that help is gonna be 3D scan store textures or the XYZ textures. Basically all the resources that you get in the production. So if you can do it manually, you can definitely gonna be able to do it with the help of all the textures. So that's also one of the reason that I really like the way Chris Costa makes his portraits, and now I am making them like this as well. So this idea of being able to create add these details manually is, I think, phenomenal to me. So I do like to create my portraits, my personal pieces like this. And whenever I'm working for production, I always just use those maps because obviously you want to save time and you want to be physically accurate. So, yes, but that doesn't mean that they are not realistic. I mean, mine might not be realistic to you, but look at Chris Costa's because he's the OG, right? He's the original one. And I am gonna be there. I really hope that in the next few years, I'm gonna be able to get portraits like his. I'm going to be able to achieve the realism that he basically achieves in his portraits. Okay, so again, I was talking about portraits and not what I'm doing in the video itself. Actually, the thing is, I am kind of just looking at the reference and trying to repeat the same thing in my piece as well. So I think that you can just see what I'm doing. So I don't think it's like I think it's pretty obvious what I'm doing right now, and that's why I didn't really wanted to say anything about it because in the end, whatever I am doing in the portrait is basically I'm just trying to copy what I'm seeing in the reference. So I think it doesn't make sense for me to commentate each and every step. For example, in this particular case, I can commentate this. As you can see, he have this thing. I have no idea what do you even call it, like these marks, like these volumes, right, in this particular area. And you cannot see it in this particular reference, but I have multiple of them in the second screen when I was actually working on him. And he had these, so I had to add the greenish kind of a color in that particular area. So in order to add the greens, not the greens, but the colors like this, you either need to remove the jitter so that your colors does not spread, or you can just switch to another brush in order to add these lines. So you can clearly see what I'm doing. I'm basically just adding the darker colors in between the wrinkles, and then at the wrinkle itself, I've already done this with the previous wrinkles, by the way. In the wrinkle itself, I'm just trying to brighten the color up. So that was actually the workflow in the past itself. I mean, past as well, not itself. So yes, basically, I'm just approaching the same way. One more information about the course. Blender have just recently added this hair system that uses geometry nodes, and they have also just implemented some of the modifiers. For example, the clumping modifiers, the noise modifier. In the recent course that I've just created, you are gonna see the link in the description, by the way. You're gonna see that I have implemented the same hair system. So you're gonna be able to learn about using that hair system and how I have used that to groom him. So if you wanna use this hair system, if you wanna learn to use this hair system, then you can also buy the course. And yep, this is also one of the coolest thing. Also, you can see we are using the new Blender sculpting tools in order to paint. So this is also a new tool, right? So we are also using like two new tools at least in this particular course. So if you want to know about both of these, then you can actually just buy the course. And obviously, we are creating a portrait, and it's a likeness, by the way. So you basically get likeness, you get portrait creation, you get all the details without the need of third-party resources. You'll get grooming because there are courses that are just only about the groomings, but in this particular case, you are getting everything. So yes, you can actually get that, not get that, you will get that. I don't know. English is still something that I kinda, it's not, you cannot say that I struggle, but whenever I am recording, I don't know, I just cannot speak like cleanly or correctly, but you get the idea, right? So these are some of the things that you are gonna be able to get in the course. And if you are interested on doing the likeness in Blender, if you are interested in grooming the hairs, if you are interested in creating the portrait from start to finish, then this course is for you. And I don't think I should actually say anything else. Okay, in this particular case, you can see that I am adding the darker lines in the crevices of the wrinkles. And the idea is again pretty simple. First thing first, it is going to create an effect of AO, and it is going to feel like that there are some shadows in between. And second thing, it is when we'll start blending, it is just going to look nicer. Now you are seeing that I'm doing the same thing that I've done pretty frequently before. And these are some of the things that I just keep on saying because I want to make sure that whenever you are creating your own portrait, or in this particular case, painting your own portrait, you make sure you have these points remembered because these are kind of important. I mean, obviously, you need to look at your references, and if your wrinkles are darker, then obviously don't add the paler color like this. And yeah, just look at the reference. Actually, references are more important because all the characters are different. So there is a possibility that your character itself does not have brighter wrinkles for some reason. So yes, just look at the references, and if your reference allows you to have something similar that I have in this particular case, then do something similar, but the workflow is again the same. If you want to create more variation, then this is the workflow that I've shown you, and you can see the amount of details you can get in the color map. And yep, this is something that I kind of enjoy doing as well, because it is more artistic. Like, there is no other reason for me to approach it like this. It is definitely more artistic, it is definitely more fun. I mean, it is more fun than projection painting, right? Okay, so at this point, because we are at the end of the video, you can see that I've started adding more details. And by more details, I want to say that I'm closer to the skin now, and I am just painting more variation and trying to get more sharper variation in the skin itself. I mean, obviously, I was painting the skin the whole time, but now I am closer to the skin, and I am just trying to get that crisper kind of a look in the base color. And in order to get that, you can clearly see that I'm closer to the reference. So this is also something that you can say that I've done. Yeah, because I am closer, the colors are gonna be crispier, because I'm not doing the bigger strokes right now. I am just doing the smaller strokes and trying to make sure that each and every single detail that I have is crispier, and it just look nicer and have enough variation that it looks like a skin and not silicon. So in order to make sure that the skin looks like a skin and does not look like it is made out of silicon, it is important to have this variation. Okay, so we are done painting the skin and we're gonna see how the skin is looking in the test render. If you have liked the video, if you have liked the process, then consider liking, sharing and subscribing. If you wanna know this in details, then obviously just buy the course, because in the course we are gonna be doing each and every single thing that you are seeing in the portrait right now. So yes, bye bye.